Debate over the contentious Treaty Principles Bill followed the Prime Minister as he made the annual pilgrimage to Rātana today. The architect of that debate, David Seymour, was the only political leader to snub the celebrations. Instead, the future Deputy Prime Minister made his own State of the Nation speech and pitched the idea of privatising public services like healthcare. Senior political correspondent Jenna Lynch has the story.
Trumpets and trombones, drowning out the undertone of uncomfortability for the welcome of politicians at Rātana this year.
I know the treaty has been an area of huge contention.
The mood still sweet in the face of a soured Crown Māori relationship due to the Treaty Principles Bill.
The Treaty Principles Bill should be a dead duck.
The government hosing down concerns, reiterating promises of killing the bill.
We've made a statement that that bill is dead on the water. So why would there be complaints of all these concerns if it is never going to go past the first reading?
As I've said many times before, the National won't support the bill, it will be voted down and it won't become law.
I think his just dismissal of it as an overreaction or just nothing to get worried about, I think was actually pretty patronising.
It'll get voted down, it'll get knocked on the head and we will move forward.
Whatever Christopher Luxon and Winston Peters say, right now Parliament is still considering that bill.
The man who caused the angst skipping the event.
It didn't escape everybody that David Seymour decided to go off and do a stand-up as the pōwhiri was standing and starting as people were coming on.
Instead addressing a sold-out crowd and still somewhat undermining the Prime Minister's repeated assurances that the bill was going nowhere.
Still succeed this time, or it may be one of those bills that simply breaks the ground so something like it can proceed in the future.
Every time he says, no, this bill might well pass, he's saying Christopher Luxon is a liar. That's Christopher Luxon's future Deputy Prime Minister saying that.
But the treaty was a small segment of Seymour's State of the Nation, which mostly returned to ACT Party roots.
The big P word. Everyone gets squeamish, says privatisation.
Pitching private, pretty much everything.
All I want people to do is ask the question, should the government own this? So obviously there's going to be things that people are going to say, no, that's too sensitive or this is not. But right now we don't even ask the question.
So he's asking, what if people could choose to take the $6,000 per taxpayer the government spends on health and buy private insurance instead?
And I know there are people that say, that is so radical. Well, actually, that is how most European systems, whether it's France or Switzerland or Germany, operate.
They want to defund, destabilise and privatise as much of the public service as they possibly can. And that includes things like healthcare, things like education.
Christopher Luxon reassuring a member of the public as news trickled down country.
Don't privatise our hospitals.
Don't you worry, we'll be all good.
But hospitals were just the beginning of the privatisation pitch.
That is ultimately this government's agenda. It's the most right-wing neoliberal government that we've seen since the early 1990s.
Seymour came for the state-owned farms.
To invest $2 billion and make a loss, that's a bit of a worry. I think we should ask that question.
The trains.
Look, in my view, Kiwi Rail is not making a return. And that's, again, we have to have the debate, is it making a return or is it fulfilling some other public good?
The houses.
If you made me king for a day, I would say they'll be much better looked after by private landlords.
Have you had a conversation with Chris Bishop about how many state houses that National would be willing to sell?
We have an ongoing conversation as part of the budget, but I'd go into
As part of the budget, so it's on the table for this year's budget?
I'm never going to talk about the budget until the budget's released.
As I said, we've said we won't be selling state assets. What we're doing, wholesale sale of state assets, what we're focused on is making sure we actually grow the economy.
Christopher Luxon promised no asset sales this term, but his language is softening.
Is there any world where you will sell off more state assets?
Well, look, I'm open to the conversation, but as I said at the beginning of coming to government, it's not something on our agenda right now. What is on our agenda is actually how we accelerate economic growth, but it's something that I'm open to discussing further in the longer term.
Seymour says the time for discussion is now.
We're facing some tough times, and that will inevitably require tough choices to be made.
Those tough choices need to be agreed across all parties, though, and Seymour might just have a bit more trouble getting New Zealand First singing from the sell-off song sheet.
Jenna is with us now. Kia ora, Jenna. So we're set to see the Treaty Principles Bill dominate the agenda, do you think, heading into Waitangi Week?
Yeah, that's right. Starting first thing on Monday morning, the Justice Select Committee is opening that public debate on the Treaty Principles Bill. The oral submissions will be heard by that committee during the week next week. First up on the agenda is the Honourable David Seymour himself. 8:15 Monday morning, he will be addressing that committee. Now, we've just got a list of the first ones through that will be addressing the committee. They're being given 10-minute time slots each, and there is a lot of people to get through. The Justice Committee is still going through how they're going to manage the influx of people that want to submit on this bill, so it is going to go well into Waitangi Week. Christopher Luxon has a lot more talking about this to do yet.